It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today we're going to be talking about the Living Abyss and this boss and how to handle it, how to approach it. So this boss specifically has some interesting caveats. The lower the level, the more careful you have to be with team setup because it's not a one team fits all sort of setup right now, just because of the way it specifically works for this boss. So, information real quick. This boss gains immunity from all debuffs as a passive, except for the burn and vampire bite, which it becomes highly resistant to damage. So, you can do the chill of the abyss with the debuffs. However, if you do, you make it more damage resistant. So using Rye and Vampire Cookie here aren't really in your favor because you make the actual boss more damage resistant. So that's a tough thing right there. In addition, the Abyssal Hives, the passives, it creates 2 blobs of licorice ooze that at a certain intervals, and the boss will also receive the same amount of damage when the Summon Licorice Ooze blobs are hit. Summon Licorice Ooze monsters are weaker against injury, and its effects may stack up to a max of 100%. So those are the 2 main things to consider and think about. Now, I'm not going to use a full-on hit here just because we're coordinating this and trying to get the most value out of the attacks as possible. As you can see from the battle log here, this is just my battle log. On boss level 4, I did 33 million damage with this team. And then I did a carryover of 5 million to the level 4, and then was able to hit for another 29. So, that was with that team there using Clotted Cream. We've since instead figured out that this team does even better. And it's using Cherry Blossom instead of Clotted, but still using the Summon team setup as well. So what's happening here is the main damage, the main focus of where damage is happening is actually on the licorice blobs. If you just fought the boss, you wouldn't have anywhere near the potential to deal that much damage because of the way the boss works, the way the health is set up, the way that the stats are set up. Just doesn't really align that well. But the way this setup works is that when those blobs come out, each time there's more and more and more of them, and when you're dealing damage to these blobs, you're dealing that same damage to the boss. So it's really the blobs surviving that's making you deal that massive amount of damage. When the blobs are killed too easily, or just not receiving enough damage, you're actually not dealing much damage to the boss itself. So you can see here, 43 million damage. And that's mostly centered with Snow Sugar as the main focus. Granted, the attack buffs are happening from Cherry Blossom. You have the Crunchy Chip taking the hits from the Devourer from the main boss, but yet the wolves are still attacking. You have Oyster pumping up critical attacks and stats and defenses. So it's just a nice synergy of everything happening here at the higher levels. But this team does not work for level 1. It doesn't work for level 1. I'll actually have to have a separate guide for how the level 1 Abyss boss works. But this is what the setup is working for the higher level boss right now. And I'll show you too at level 5. So level 5, same kind of thing. And yet again, if you are too strong and you're able to take out the blobs too easily, you won't actually do as much damage to the boss itself. So do consider that, because that's going to be really the main focus of how you handle this boss and how you fight it in the coming levels and waves. Because as you get a higher level, you might have an even harder time hitting down the boss. But that's why the 8 times total that you can try to attack it and hit it, that matters for how you cooperate that with your guild and how you approach the battle from the boss itself. So all that is a really good marriage and synergy between how the team setup works and how you can approach this boss all together. So as you can see this time, level 5, this team worked truly beautifully. We almost completely took out the level 5 boss altogether. When we used Clotted Cream, we were able to take a high chunk out of it too. So it's a blend between area of effect damage and also having the good setup to let the blobs come out and take them out. So if we practice against the level 4 using this team, you'll see here that We don't have nearly as much trouble as far as the damage being inflicted on our team, and the blobs are still coming out at a good pace. The HP is vastly reduced on this specific boss, so this one, if your team is set up correctly, you may actually be able to get all the way through this boss and carry over to the remaining with time left over. So that is something that you can consider, because you can see this HP bar of this boss is just absolutely being obliterated away just because of these blobs taking so much damage and not pushing against our team, not pushing them back, and us just being able to consistently push through. Now, we would have time left to attack if we use Clotted instead of Cherry Blossom here with this same setup, and that's because of the way the area of damage works from Clotted Cream Cookie and how that would have worked against this boss. And so I'll show you that real quick. If we move over to Clotted Cream instead of Cherry Blossom and fight just specifically the level 4 one, we'll have a very different result in the coordinates. And so this boss is very finicky and particular about the way you attack and the way you present your team to it. It's not the same as the other two bosses. Actually, they're all very unique. The Red Velvet Dragon, of course, is still something that we know and understand, but the stats have definitely been reworked to make it to where you're not just plowing through hundreds of levels of these bosses. Instead, it's actually a lot lower of the levels that you're going to be able to get through because of the way it's set up. So it's I'm going to do guides specifically on each boss, the best way to approach them, the best way to handle them, as they all have some reworking so that there's more to consider, more to think about when approaching and fighting these bosses. So this time we beat level 4 with like 1 second left to go. So as you can see, there's definitely some blends and changes that you have to do to make the whole setup work against the Abyss boss. Definitely a tough one to fight. The next one that we're probably going to cover is the Avatar. This one has some interesting setups and battles, and then we will of course get to the Red Velvet Dragon too and cover the teams for that. So I hope that this is at least helpful for you for now for the Abyss boss. Hopefully you have some better understanding of how this boss works. Yet again, I'll cover a separate guide for the lower level 1 and level 2 boss because it is actually run differently completely than the higher level ones. And we will cover as we get to the even higher levels as well, as things may still even change. So hopefully this has been something that helps you and helps you progress in your guild battles. I wish you all the best of luck, and of course please let me know in the comments your favorite features, your best update, things that you love the most, and just how you're approaching these battles and teams and what you find the most interesting. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.